On January 23, 2023, researchers of the Institute for National Security Studies, INSS, submitted the Strategic Analysis for Israel 2023 to the President of Israel. This document serves as a comprehensive analysis of Israel's strategic environment from the perspective of national security, focusing on the main current threats, as well as potential opportunities for Israel, and maybe most importantly, includes a series of policy recommendations for decision makers. Ladies and gentlemen, the INSS assessment for the upcoming year arrives at a crucial time for Israel, for the Israeli public. Israel of 2023 is a country in a deep crisis, experiencing one of its most critical social and political disputes, as its separation of powers between the legislative, judicial, and executive branches is already now being subjected to a radical change. Where is this change leading to is a question yet to be answered. However, it is seen by hundreds of thousands of Israelis demonstrating week by week all over the country as a step which endangers the very core democratic and liberal DNA of the country since its establishment. The legislative crisis is not the only challenge Israel is faced with currently. Massive escalation of violence is registered in the West Bank, in East Jerusalem, and in Gaza. The Israeli internal and regional arenas will serve as issues for discussions in our program today. As a strategic institute, the INSS explores and analyzes in its assessment also key global trends which pose serious challenges to Israel's national security, all listed in the INSS strategic analysis for 2023. We will discuss them as well. This program is divided in two parts. The first part, available already now in all digital platforms, discusses INSS recommendations regarding U.S.-Israeli special relations and regarding Iran. The second part, which is recorded today, will be dedicated to Israel's internal as well as regional arenas. INSS podcast, my name is Adi Kantor. We begin right after this. Hello and welcome to part 2 of a special program of the INSS podcast series dedicated to the INSS Strategic Analysis for Israel in 2023, broadcasted to you from our new studios here at the INSS Tel Aviv. My name is Adi Kantor, and next to me in the desk is Major General Reserve Tamir Hayman. Major General Hayman is Israel's former head of intelligence directorate, and today he serves as the managing director of the Institute for National Security Studies. We are joined again today on this program to discuss further the INSS recommendations for Israel's internal and regional arenas. These chapters are, of course, also available in English in the INSS website. Tamir, again, a warm welcome to you. Thank you so much for joining me again today.
Thank you, Adi. My pleasure.
So today I would like to begin our talk focusing on the home front and the Israeli internal arena, and probably with the most crucial issue on the table as we speak, the so-called legislative reform led by the current coalition in Israel. And I think, Tamir, it's important to say to our audience that this so-called reform is perceived by many Israelis and also in the international community as a legislative upheaval, not less than this. In the last several weeks in Israel, the conflict between supporters and opposers of the legislative reform has accelerated to an extent in which the President of Israel, Yitzhak Herzog, held a national speech stating how concerned and fearful he is in the situation, and is currently trying to find a way to bring the two parties together and try to negotiate. We witness as we speak right now, hundreds of thousands of civilians all over the country who are demonstrating, and we saw also violent cases between demonstrators, also in the police last week. Israel is at a very dangerous crossroad. I think this is without a question. What are the INSS views concerning this, with regards, of course, to national security? Where is it all headed?
Yeah, well, lots of change and evolved since we've published our national security analysis. It seems like yesterday, but it was a month and a half ago, and during that month and a half, the legislation reform, or some call it the legislation coup, is accelerating. And as we speak, this Thursday is considered as Rage Day. across Israel. Tens of thousands of protesters are marching the streets of Tel Aviv and all across Israel. So it's important maybe to start in this issue, our second part. And although the main focus of the legislation is about democracy and the separation between the authorities, different authorities in Israel, we will focus on the national security issues because that's our main concern here at the Institute. And I want to share with the audience the Institute 4 challenges for national security driven by this legislation reform if it will pass as it's suggested right now. I'm not talking about compromises, which are, the Institute supports such compromise in order to narrow the rift that's tearing these people apart. But if the legislation will pass as it is right now, we are considering 4 major negative effects. One is what we call social resilience. Israel is a very small country. The IDF is based on recruits from mandatory service and reserve. Social resilience is important all across the world. We can see it in what's happening in Ukraine right now. It's the way to create the necessary strength in order to challenge the external threats.
The national identity.
And but in Israel, it's crucial for the IDF. The IDF is part of that resilience, and the reserve part is part of that resilience. As long as we are threatening and creating rifts and doubts and tearing that apart, it can harm the coherence of the IDF and the Israeli society. The second element is the importance of independent Supreme Court in backing Israeli military activity in the international platform, in the international judiciary system. The fact that the Supreme Court is so highly respected and independent and often decides against the decisions of the government. That creates some prestige among the international community that can support the Israeli soldiers, officers, commanders by shielding them against the ICC, for example, or other attempts because
the international courts.
Yes, because of what we call what called the complementarity principle, which is we know that Israel has independent judicial system and it can investigate itself and create the necessary procedure in order to prosecute or to deal with in any case of there is a threat to law, and the international community does not intervene. And if we will diminish the power of or the independency of the Supreme Court, they will intervene.
Sure.
This can open a scale of problems to the Israeli defense forces and commandos.
There will be lawsuits against them abroad. They can be arrested abroad.
They can be arrested, and we will not know whether that arrest warrant has issued, because it's anyone can issue that kind of an order. And right now they are not intervening because we have the Supreme Court support, the Supreme Court independence.
Sure.
Third, and we've seen it in Ukraine, in the long term, not tomorrow, long term, if you do not have a very open and clear and clean system, you open the door for corruption. You open the door for misleads. You open the door for dishonesty and the element of professionalism as the key issues in appointing people, commanders and officials, can be eroded. And that can lead to what we saw eventually, what we are seeing right now in the Russian army, that's really happening in Ukraine. And the fourth, and we have discussed it earlier, it's the relationship with the United States. The issues of values, the fact that the United States is proud to support the only democracy in the United States.
In the Middle East.
In the Middle East, sorry. The only democracy in the Middle East. And the fact of the matter that we share the same values, and they are proud of supporting those values in this rough neighborhood can be also eroded, which might enhance the challenge of the United States backing, special relationship with the United States.
Of course, and I think this is a good point also to recommend to our viewers also, if you haven't listened to the part one of the program, in which we discuss how crucial the relations are between Israel and the United States, the special relations with regards to national security. I think this is a good point to recommend to hear it again and relate it to what Tamir just said. Thank you for this. Of course, we are not, when we're dealing with the internal arena, we're not dealing only with this. There are so many challenges. And now moving on to another burning front, the current wave of terror and the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. On now to another burning front, the current wave of terror and the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. The last weeks and months were characterized by increasing and alarming violence and radicalization from both the Palestinian and the Israeli sides. Terror attack follows the next, many casualties on both sides. And only last week, as many as 400 Jewish settlers marched to the Palestinian village of Hawara after the vicious murder of 2 Jewish men earlier that day. They burned cars and houses, and many Palestinian families had to be rescued in fear of their lives from their own houses. Tamir, what are your views regarding the current situation? What should Israel do this year in order to prevent what we're seeing?
Yes, we are facing multiple problems and challenges in the Palestinian arena. We are talking about mid-term challenge and the long-term challenge. The mid-term challenge, which is obviously coming, we are getting more and more close to it, is something from lack of any kind of a better term, let's call it the third intifada. Let's call it a kind of...
We're already calling it.
Yes, maybe like a large scale of violence wave that is much more than the terror wave that we are facing right now. And we analyze it in the paper of the merge of 3 elements that merge into a perfect storm. This is the frustration of youth across the Judah and Samaria, which have no really sense of prosperity or any kind of future. They lost their hope and they are frustrated from the current leadership, the previous leadership. They are not supporting any section of the Palestinian political structure, and they want something new. They oppose Israel, they are pro-terror, and that phenomena is widespread across all the Judah and Samaria. Second is the weakness of the authority of the Palestinian Authority, the establishment of the Palestinian Authority, mainly the security forces. It's a long-going process, and it's mainly due to in the response of the Palestinians, because the corruption, because of the way that they built their forces. But overall, over a long period of time, it's starting to melt from the inside. Those establishment and the security coordination with Israel. And third is the supreme leadership of the Palestinian Authority, which is Abu Mazen.
We call it the day after Abbas already.
Yeah. But currently is not relevant. He is isolated in Ramallah. He doesn't really aware of what's happening on the field. It seems that he's not relevant to any of the current challenges that we are facing. He may diminish the level of violence through the authority right now, but in long term it depends one another. So if the authority will crumble, he will eventually we will lose all the system of the Palestinian Authority, which is a dramatic problem. The long-term challenge is what we call the continuation of sliding into one-state situation, one-state reality, which is if the Palestinian Authority will dissolve to
Fall
parts,
apart. Yeah.
and we're going to face a one-state situation. We will not have another entity of the Palestinian entity. The only reason
there will be no address. Yeah.
Address. We currently consider the situation as temporary because we have no address. We have no leadership in the other side that we can strike a deal and create some kind of permanent solution by dividing into two entities. Yeah. So we are just managing the situation. And the United States and all the international community understand that we have really objective problems, to solve the problem right now. But if we will not have any kind of address in the other side, that is, we will not have any kind of a Palestinian Authority, we will end up without barriers between the two entities into one state. In a case of one state, it's either not to be democratic or either not to be Jewish.
Exactly. We're losing one of them.
We're going to lose one, I think. And God forbid, we're going to end up maybe called apartheid states, which is not the situation right now because there is right now a Palestinian Authority. Sure. So this is the long-term threat. And of course, maintaining law and order during the frustration of large-scale numbers of youth in the Jewish part, which you mentioned right now what happened in Hawara. So there are frustrated, angry Jews on the one side, frustrated, angry Arabs who hold weapons in the other side. Yeah. And the questions that we are facing the Israeli government is we should govern the situation. We cannot afford a clash of militias from both sides taking the law to their hands. So we need to calm things down. First of all, create some kind of rules regarding lines and borders over what we call the C area. Because the A area is already Palestinians. B area, soon to be Palestinian. C area is on conflict and debate. And if the Israeli government won't decide the lines, what lines are allowed to expand the Jewish settlements, what lines are supposed to be eventually in parts of the Palestinian states or entity, we will end up as the times before Israeli became independence, as a militias fighting one another, which is...
Of course. We're witnessing actually a situation in which there is a decision not to make a decision, or there's a fear of making a decision in this case.
The question is whether we are changing the strategy. Up till now, the strategy is that we don't have partners, so we are managing this conflict. But eventually, we're going to reach a separation idea between... Okay. But right now, due to the new coalition that is the policy of the new coalition, and some authorities that are transformed from the Ministry of Defense to the Ministry of Defense, the civilian, what the Smotrich got, and other legislations that are on the way suggest or hints that maybe the Israeli government is shifting from a separation vision to another vision, which is maybe some kind of annexation, de facto annexation, or sliding into a situation which is other and without deciding it formally and without announcing it. Exactly. And that is a question we are asking here at the Institute. Are we shifting without announcing it from one strategy to another?
These are questions yet to be answered, and I think I'm looking here at the list of questions. So many burning fronts. Thank you for this. Turning now to our neighbors from north, Lebanon and Syria, it should be said that the most significant conventional military threat to Israel is seen from the northern arena, which includes Lebanon and Syria, and the multitude of actors operating there, state and non-state. This arena is closely related to Iran, the leader of the radical axis, which serves as an ideological and operative center. Despite Israel's effort, Hezbollah continues in the last year with its military buildup with the help of Iran, and it succeeded in increasing its abilities. Tamir, what are your views, what are INSS views with regards to this arena, and what should Israel do this year?
Basically, we have two challenges in the northern front. In the Syrian part of the northern front, we have the Iranian intervention and Iranian entrenchment in Syria, and in the western side of the front, in Lebanon, we have what I call the false self-confidence of Nasrallah and Hezbollah. Let's address the Syrian part first of all. We have good news there. Soleimani's vision crippled, almost destroyed. In 2016, General Qasem Soleimani issued the visions that we call it the Soleimani vision. He wanted to control Syria and create another Hezbollah, actually two Hezbollahs in Syria. He didn't succeed. There is no military base, there is no airports, there is no military industry, and there are no real forces that are similar to Nasrallah. But we have there still civilian entrenchment that increasing. Shiaization of the situation. They are buying neighborhoods, Iranians buying neighborhoods in Damascus, influencing the civilian structure and demography in the south near Jordan, trying to influence what happened in Aleppo, in north. So they have transferred from military entrenchment into civil entrenchment in order to, if they didn't succeed militarily because of our operation between the war and the Israeli strikes, they will succeed on the other mission, which is the civilian aspect.
The civilians.
Yes, Assad will remain as a puppet by the mullahs in Iran, and he will conduct what their interests are in the situation. So we should re-examine our operational vision, not the strategic one. I think strategically, maintaining Syria as divided as to what we call here in the Institute the four Syrias, the Syrias of the different parts of the Syria, is really aligned with the Israeli interests. And we don't really see any kind of a potential of consolidation of Syria to something that used to be a major challenge. But still, we have to readjust our operational idea how to maintain the Iranian entrenchment beneath a level that is risk in terms of risk management is acceptable, and in the other term, to think differently about the civilian entrenchment in Syria. Regarding Hezbollah, first of all, we succeeded on eliminating almost totally the presence of Hezbollah in the Golan Heights in the Syrian aspect, in the Golan Heights of the Syria. Syrian. So now the problem is that Nasrallah is now the major, I think the most respectable Shiite commander in all of Quds force, in Iranian Quds force and in Iran. He became a legend because all of the others were eliminated. And that's convinced him that he is really capable. And he also is convinced that he forced the hands of Israel in the latest conflict we had, or friction we had over the gas reservoir of Karish. He forced Israel to accept some kind of compromise and signed agreement with Lebanon after he threatened to strike Karish. Although it's complete false, also it's a false narrative, which he knows that for a fact. That kind of experience and other hints that he gets from the area convinced him that Israel is deterred from him. And due to that
false narrative,
he may be driven into false action or to miscalculate the risk towards Israel in the next friction in the border of Lebanon. That can escalate into a regional war, because false perspective or misperception leads to false
to false actions.
And that can escalate into some kind of a dynamic that can spill out of control. So this is a challenge, and we need constantly to think how will we respond to the next challenge that Nasrallah will pose to us, and he will do that. We need to act without spilling into a full-scale war, but re-evaluating or re-establishing the deterrence against Nasrallah. And this is a operational challenge, but it's really getting close.
Moving on now to the last subject of today's program. We are stepping out now, but not too far, for a glimpse on Israel's regional front. The Abraham Accords are continuing to deepen. Israel and Turkish relations seem to be getting warmer, especially after the latest deadly earthquake in Turkey and the Israelis' aid. We witnessed the ongoing weakening of the status of political Islamic organizations in the region, led by the Muslim Brotherhood, and the growing importance of climate and environmental aspects, and the need to address them in cooperation with countries in the region. At the same time, and in negative sense, the economic gaps between the rich countries, mainly oil and gas producers, and the poor oil importing countries, whose economic situation has worsened, have deepened. Tamir, where is it leading to in the regional arena, from regional perspective, and how does it affect Israel's national security?
The Abraham Accords are a strategic drama. A strategic change that
game changer,
really game changer, that really improved our strategic overall posture in the region and globally. And we should examine that in facing the global situation of competitive groups, or what we call the New World Order, or the changing of the competition over a new world order, because the major players or the superpowers are shifting out of the Middle East, neglecting it to maybe other aspects. So we can see that as a problem, but we can see that as an opportunity to create a new global group, new global section that has some kind of awareness of itself. That is the regional aspect. So for that reason, we need to expand the Abraham Accords, and of course, the capstone could be Saudi Arabia, which is on the way, but it will take time. Maybe we can discuss it more. We should deepen the relationship into all levels of normalizations, from the civilian economic tourism to cultural, and eventually, in the last place, security also issues. And we should maintain those agreements, and we should not accept it as facts or as something that is fortified for the future. Can always maintain, seek for soft points, or try to maintain it in order to strengthen it. And we have a kind of you mentioned the rich parties, rich in technology, which is not really equal among all the players of the Abraham Accords. So in that aspect, we can see the climate change as a potential
common denominator, maybe.
Yes, for the area, because if you combine the technology and the money that is in the area, and you see the challenge rising just in the horizon. It's not too far.
Yes.
We can combine forces in order to support each other, because few countries in the Middle East won't survive the climate change because of lack of energy, technology, and we are going to face food security problems and water security problems.
Migration, I think,
Yeah,
will affect them.
and that will lead to migration, and immigration will lead to conflicts on the borders, and that can really, that's a problem.
It's already happening, yeah.
Yeah, it happened in Africa, but we don't really want it to happen here in the Middle East. If Jordanians don't have enough water, they will end up maybe
Or
addressing
Egyptians
their
on the-
government, and later on Israel, Egypt also. So if we have a more broad strategy facing the climate change and merging forces of tech, money, vision, we can support each other and create that new group, that local group of. I find it hard to call it coalition, because coalition is too expanding, but a new group, some kind of a regional formation that has a stand.
New order, yeah.
Has a stand inside the changing of world order. So that's a potential that we are facing, and overall, this is the silver lining in our national annual strategy.
The assessment.
Yeah.
Do you see, by the way, regarding to what you just said, how these countries are now reacting to what is happening inside Israel? Do you see any challenge there?
Most of our neighbors do not worried about democracy for obvious reasons. So that's really not kind of something that challenge them, and they are concerned of other aspects.
Regarding the conflict.
No, the conflict Israeli. If you are mentioning the Palestinians, yes, mainly Saudis and Jordan are very much involved and worried. Egypt also about what happening in the Palestinian arena. Other Gulf countries and more distinct African countries are less obsessed of that issue. But if you're asking yourself about the potential normalization with Saudi, so we have two obstacles. One is the Palestinian, and the other is United States. And we know those two thresholds you must pass in order to get the normalization. The first of them is the Palestinian issue, and as long as we don't solve the problem there, I don't see any that across the corner.
And everything we talked about today is interrelated and interconnected to one another. These are not separated issues, of course. Tamir Hayman, thank you very, very much for enlightening us on really crucial issues for Israel's national security. We are ending our program today. A lot of issues on the table, on the agenda, and we will meet again in the next program to discuss them. Thank you very much to the viewers and our listeners. See you next time.